6 p.m., 6:01 p.m. on July 25th, 2023. Welcome to the Leominster Conservation Commission meeting. My name is Nick Kremp, I'm the conservation agent. Before we get going, I just want to remind everyone to please silence your cell phones or any devices you might have on you before we get going here. And now I will proceed with a roll call of the commissioners present. Jim Chambers. Here. Stephanie Quinlan.
Here.
Bob Seacard.
Here.
And Richard Gullick. Here. All right. And absent are Mike Seeke, Ken Ridlin, and our chair, Chuck Raymond. But with 4, we have a majority, a quorum, so we can proceed with the meeting. And I'll hand it off to our vice chair, Richard Gullick.
Thank you very much, Nick. Good evening and welcome, everyone. As our first item on the agenda, I'd like to, if anybody here wants to ask anything of the commission or say anything to the commission that's not related to something on the agenda, this is a good time to do it and get out quick. Okay, we'll move into the next agenda item. Actually, there's nothing in tonight on the agenda for new hearings. There are 2 continued hearings from the past, but we're going to slide those further back in the agenda and get right up ahead to part E, 2A and B here for 60 Harwood Terrace and the Brobeck analysis update. Just before we get started, give you a second first. I would like to run through a little chronology of this case, just for anybody who might be new here and so on. I didn't get a chance to read these first. But it was first brought to the commission back in October or so 2022, maybe a little before that. We had our first site visit out there. This is at Harwood Terrace at February 23rd a year ago. And then there was a meeting where there wasn't a quorum reached, and a meeting on March 15th of 2022. The order of conditions was signed by the commission. Only 3 of the current commissioners were on the commission then. I'm the only one here tonight who is on the commission then and approved that particular order of conditions. And summer, I guess, began last year. So that was just the beginning part that I wanted to bring up some of that. That was one for you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Going back a ways. I was out there on Monday. So it was a week ago, right after that. Not during the big Sunday storm, but the day after it when there was a rain. Walked behind Ian's house at 50 Hillary Road. It seemed pretty common. Obviously, you guys know that you had the collapse and everything, but that whole bank of what was a stream, almost a stream drainage ditch had collapsed. It had filled in. So everything's just flowing over the gentleman's backyard and so on. On Hillary Road, I did want to say, I had a couple comments there. As the water comes down on the side, if you're looking up at Ian's house on the right, it comes down 50, and then there's also another, the house next to it, it comes down right next to that. The one gets into the storm drain, but the one for 50 doesn't get into the storm drain too well. It's been blocked by leaves before and so on. With the big rain, and on Monday, there was just too much. It wasn't getting in there. It was just going across the street. And then you walk down that street, and that water would have gone into a storm drain where it was perfectly lined up, but it was blocked by pine branches from a winter storm that were still here in July, and they've collected a bunch of sediment. So that blocked not all the flow, but most of it, so it moved back across the street again, where it then approaches the storm drain down, I guess it's a couple houses down there, near 32, and that storm drain is not contoured enough to catch most all the water, so then it crosses back across the street. So had that water originally gone into the first storm drain, or the second even, we wouldn't have all the crossing back and forth. So there are some things on Hillary only related to water in Hillary, not related to what's coming down there, that could be done. So maybe if you could say something to DPW to take a look out there, especially in that one particular storm drain.
Yep.
It's a small part of this issue, but was one I want to bring up. So with that all said, we've got quite an issue on our hands, and we'll leave it to you to introduce yourself and tell us what you want to tell us on behalf of the applicant.
Sure. For the record, Chris Anderson, Hannigan Engineering, was the original civil engineer for the 60 Harwood Terrace order of conditions and notice of intent filing last year. So I was sure much of the commission's aware, we had a very significant rainfall event on the 16th of July As part of that, a failure occurred at the slope along the side of the driveway for the Hardwood Terrace property, which is Josh Branicki's property itself. At that time, a substantial slide occurred due to a series of events, based on the the weather that we're currently having. What ultimately happened was water worked its way through the stone around the originally proposed drainage pipe. It was installed per plan and everything was according to plan.
What size is that pipe, Chris?
It's an 18-inch.
18-inch, thank you.
So that pipe was sized to accommodate up to in excess of a 100-year storm event. It's actually about a little shy than 2.5x the anticipated flow going to that pipe at the end of the day. So it's adequately designed. It's just that we've been inundated with so much water over the last couple of months. The ground has saturated as much as it can, and now we're just getting into an excessive hydraulic state at this point. But ultimately what happened, based on what we saw on site, immediately after the collapse, it looks like water was working itself around the pipe due to the saturated condition of the ground, ultimately broke out through the slope and caused a catastrophic failure. As many of the members might be aware, we did receive approximately 2.37 inches of rain at the Fitchburg Airport itself during that storm event, which is very short-lived. So it was a high-intensity storm, which is not typical of what we see in normal circumstances. So this was an extraordinary event that led to an extraordinary failure. When that slope gave way, a lot of earth moved into the wetland area, filled in the intermittent stream channel that was originally reviewed by the commission under that original order of conditions. That stream, or that channel, if you will, effectively got filled with sediments, and then further sediment was migrated onto abutting properties further downstream. That channel is an intermittent drainage channel that was, anecdotally prepared and installed back when the original houses were constructed on Hillary Road. So it predates the wetland regulations, and it's an ancestry feature on the property that kind of has grown itself into a wetland over time. During that storm event, a large amount of sediment, dirt, rocks, anything you can imagine on that hill went down the stream and created sediment ponds all down the stream towards Hillary Road, which caused additional erosion elsewhere throughout the area. It's our intent, as part of the violation order that was issued, to come before the commission to provide them, you guys, the actual restoration plan that we're intending on utilizing to help clean up that area and reestablish the natural resource area in that corner of the world. Since the time, at the direction of our office as well as in coordination with Nick, we have stabilized that slope. So there is effectively a riprap slope in that entire area where the blowout occurred to stabilize it, so there's no further erosion, and to prevent any other kind of failures in the future. We know the slope is pretty stable. The only area that did fail during that event was in the general vicinity of this pipe where the water naturally congregated. So that's how we were pretty certain that slope is stable for the time being.
When you redid this, was the rock put around the pipe like it was originally, which caused this problem?
So the pipe that actually had the rock and water issue was actually underneath the driveway. So the pipe that goes from the manhole structure to the discharge pipe that was currently there remained intact for the longevity of the event. So we know that pipe isn't functioning as appropriate. It was just the pipe that was underneath the driveway broke out, if that makes sense.
Pass down from the manhole.
From the opposite of the end of the driveway against the slope of the hill, to there's a manhole structure that collects the water and directs it towards the discharge pipe that was originally approved. So the first length of pipe from the collection system to the discharge caused that conduit flow to occur.
Do you think that the way it's designed now, with hindsight, of course, money quarterbacking, is adequate in terms of how many pathways across that roadway that there are?
Correct.
Because it does tend to focus it and concentrate it into that one spot, and then it's got to make that right turn, and that's where the problems happen.
Correct, and we,
Gentlemen's case.
as part of the overall design of that original feature, we took a look at the original hydrology of that area. As if any of the commission members haven't been up there, it's on the side of Mount Newsnock. There's an excessive amount of ledge that is all through that area. And by the natural configuration of the land, small little rivulets formed all over that slope. The way we designed that stormwater system originally was to put the collection system in the areas that the major flows concentrated. So as part of the overall design, we put a large drainage swale with a 6-inch subdrain in it to capture all the runoff coming off that side of the slope so that we didn't have a global issue long term, such as having additional blowouts going all over the place at the end of the day. So we installed a drainage swale with a subdrain system in it. That subdrain system actually had relief drains placed along it as well. So in theory, it would collect the smaller events and distribute it along the slope as it originally did since the glaciers came through. Those pipes were sized to allow for some disbursement of the flow, and then in the event of large storm events, it would just keep flowing down towards the collection system and discharge at the point of a naturally occurring gully that formed on the side of the hill. That's how the drainage system was designed. It was designed to mimic the original condition of the land, but while also providing stabilization of the driveway for long-term longevity.
It seems, I guess, from my view of it, it seems pretty concentrated from all those different rivulets that I remember seeing it the very first time. And I remember our thoughts as commissioners, at least mine, was this water's coming down this hill no matter what.
Yep.
There's a lot of it, everything's saturated, and it's going to get there to the bottom no matter what.
Correct.
We didn't envision it coming so much in one spot and blasting through the side of that stream. So that's just my thought. Do you want to go on now and tell us about what you're proposing
Sure.
for a solution?
Yes.
Or should I see if there's any other questions from commissioners at this point? Anybody?
So-
Ready for this?
That's a recap of the overall project, or the project up to this point from a
Bob, did you want to add something at this point?
The only thing that I did notice on the west side, when the slope comes down from the top of the hill, is that the collection basin along the west side of the road, on the other side, where you have a drainage pipe covered under riprap, it seemed like there was, because of the construction on that partial hill right there leading up to that hill, a lot of the silt had collected in that riprap area, and because of the amount of rain was, a lot of people had issues that day. I got almost 2.5 inches within less than 2 hours. I mean, it was just too much for anybody to stop anything at that point. But it seemed like it overwhelmed that area. And that's where I think it skewed over the road and washed out the area.
correct. Right now it's in the construction phase right now, so everything is still in limbo and moving around. So earth is still being actively pushed around. So yes, there is some sedimentation that's occurring within the existing driveway, but that's typical of construction sites. But as part of the overall final cleanup of the site, a lot of that sediment's going to be hauled off and taken care of, and new stone placed in areas that need it. So that's unfortunately just, I don't want to say it like this, but it's the nature of construction at this point in time.
Understand?
But that is a noted concern that we had. There's a lot of sedimentation occurring in areas along the driveway. The driveway will be paved at the end of the day, so a lot of that sedimentation will be cut off long term once everything is said and done.
I want to make it known that I am no expert on any of that, but I goes, well, that's why it's coming over. I that's my just personal observation as a committee member, maybe just common sense of what I've always seen.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Okay, Chris, tell us how, sorry, go ahead, Jim. Thank you.
I'd like to know about, did the water actually flow across the driveway did it hit the gully and overfill that and actually overflow the road?
Correct. There was a pool of water that formed at that outlet structure.
Mm-hmm.
So that created a hydraulic head on top of the pipe. So hydraulic pressure on top of that, which forced more of the water through that one.
Ostensibly, road as it exists is a permeable structure, and now you're proposing paving it?
Correct.
I just want to correct that. We're not intending to pave it. It'll still remain at least semi-permeable. We're not gonna blacktop it or anything like that. We don't have that intention for the time being.
Okay, I mean, paving with stone dust.
Something that is at least semi-permeable, if not like similar to what is there now, where it can still settle into the driveway.
Thank you.
Just before we go on to that part, if I'm good, and I'm gonna ask you to add in something that's, so the violation that occurred is effectively a performance standard, fair to say, and that it wasn't that the design was necessarily wrong or wasn't built to design, but it didn't perform the way we expected. Okay, so then other questions, was the design built as it was? It looks like it was. That's what you would attest to?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of that design being approved in the first place, Nick, can you add anything about the process with DPW? Myself as a commissioner at the time assumed, I had my own conclusions about water flow, assumed that DPW had approved the drainage, that's gonna end up down in the other streets. So what can you add to that?
So because so I talked to DPW about this and in relation to also the stormwater ordinance that's in effect in Leominster. In the stormwater ordinance, the Conservation Commission is laid out as the authority, the issuing authority on that, but it delegates that authority to the DPW as well. So the way that works in practice, from what I've gathered from DPW, is that unless there is a direct tie-in to municipal storm system, any stormwater management plans that we receive as part of an NOI, the DPW does not independently review that because the commission is
So
reviewing
you
it.
don't think they reviewed this one? 'Cause
So they would.
at least I was under the impression they did.
So that's my understanding, is that they would not have in this situation because there was no direct tie-in to municipal stormwater system.
Do you guys know if they did it all here at DPW?
Probably not.
Probably not. Okay, lesson learned. Okay. Care to go on now, Chris? Thank you.
So I would just add to that as well.
Okay.
Stormwater, when it comes to single family homes, is exempt from the stormwater regulations, both state. So what we did for this site was we took a look at it and designed it to accommodate the flows that were coming off the slope. That was part of why there's such a substantial drainage system right around this development. So just as a statement to the commission, it was not ignored. It was reviewed and addressed, but at the end of the day, there was no regulatory requirement for us to do that. So, but it was taken into account. It wasn't like we brushed it off and said, "Nah." we don't want-"
Understood. I
Yeah.
can see from the design.
Yeah. So just wanted that to make statement made. That's all.
Would you consider that if that failure had not happened, which hopefully you're designing to not happen again,
Yeah.
would the water have stayed within that drainage ditch or would it have flowed over?
With the intensity of the storm, it's well beyond any storm we designed to currently. So I can't tell you one way or the other. It's been doing that since the glacier came through. It's the intent that I would keep doing it, but I can't give
But
it.
30 yards weren't getting hit like this in the past until this particular project concentrated that flow in that one location. That's what did it, was that concentration, it seems, right?
To some extent, yes, but at the end of the day, the water naturally accumulates in that corner of the world and it flows along that path.
And it's gonna come down, come down through there. Would you have something to add to that, sir?
I
'Cause
would-
I was out there this afternoon and he was explaining some of that to me.
Yeah, it just from the water that goes through the wetlands is the water that's coming off that slope. There's, to Chris's point, there's natural contours that still exist from before we started any construction that still funnel water to that same location. It might be slightly different positioning along that short run.
Let me rephrase my question.
Yes.
Do you know if you were there, was it holding up until
Oh, you
the
meant for that
collapse?
question? Gotcha. It would have exceeded the ECB's height, but it would have stood. It was still working. In fact, the storm that we had prior to that, water had filled up to the top of the ECB, and it was still being retained and buffer.
flowing over that like a little wall, and then
Exactly, and then-
it's
and then
that drainage
once
ditch
it
that I'm
crossed-
most interested in.
Yeah, and then once it crossed the ECB, then it's water in, water out, it's gonna have that same flow rate, and the creek was fine.
Okay, go ahead and tell us how we're gonna fix this now, enough
So-
beating up the past.
With that being said, I'll hand it off to Chuck Karen. He is the wetland scientist, and we walked the site with Nick on Monday now. It's Tuesday, right? On Monday, and we reviewed the site and the condition, and Chuck can dive into that a little bit further.
I'm off you.
Ah, yeah,
Copy of
he's-
my restoration sequence we look at.
Thank
Basically, I looked at it to examine what we're gonna do to fix the wetlands up after the fact.
Are we fixing the wetlands, sir, or are we fixing the drainage ditch?
So
Which
this,
It's a blunt question,
Which
but it's
ditch?
right to it.
Yeah, which drainage, did you give the
The one that goes semi-parallel to the houses.
Yes.
Where it's overflowing.
Well, I mean, that's part of the wetland system as we sit here today. As Chris said, I think that was, that little channel was constructed, I would have said 50, 60 years ago at least.
Speaking
It's kind
of the intermittent stream downslope.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
I think the water probably was more diffuse across that slope before that ditch went in, but it was, I'm assuming, put in to keep water away from Hillary Drive and put it all in one place. So that ditch is, I can see, that is a wetland resource area at this point, so I'm saying restoring it, I'm including that. I looked at what needs to be done for the cleanup and the restoration kind of in two sections. One is that area immediately below the slope failure where we have, where it looks like that ditch got eroded. We have pretty thick sediments. We got, I guess it's technically sediment, boulders that are 2 feet across sitting in there. There's enough force that there's actually some of the saplings are laying at 45-degree angles so they were pushed over. So I was looking at that as one area, and then the rest of that ditch, and then where it bends and heads down through the wetland system down to Hillary Road is a second section. On that upper section, right by the slope failure, there's been so much disturbance there from that, I think we can get the sediment out of there using equipment rather than trying to do it by hand, especially given the size of some of the rocks that are in there. So we specified going in there with a mini excavator, being careful getting, whatever route is used to get there to minimize disturbance. Excavating that down to the natural soil surface, making sure that we get the direction of the flow so it makes that bend back like it was before, which would probably be the trickiest part of the operation, but make sure that's right. Then once we get the sediment out of there, there's enough disturbance there, I think we need to do some plantings to provide some stabilization and get the habitat things back there that existed prior to this. So proposing to plant it with a mix of winterberry and spice bush. And then I think, given that sediment's been on there for such a short time, I think the herbaceous vegetation is gonna pop right back up from the existing root systems and propagules in the soil. But I have specified we're gonna put leaf litter over it, kind of as a mulch to provide some stabilization and kind of get it back to a natural surface condition. Then as we, go ahead. I was gonna go on to my next section on, as we go down the ditch and down towards Hillary Drive, the sediment through there is really not very continuous. Every place there's a branch or a log or a rock that kind of blocks the flow, there's a patch of sediment trapped behind that. So what we're proposing through that area is for us to mark out those patches that should get removed, have Nick look at it, make sure he agrees we're not overlooking anything that we should be getting out of there. And then, given that the level of disturbance, both in the wetland and in the buffer zone around it, has been minimal, that all that sediment's gonna have to be removed by hand, which is gonna be a miserable job. You take it out with a shovel and put it in buckets or a wheelbarrow and haul it out of there. One thing I think is critical on that stretch is to really make sure we're not disturbing the underlying soil in doing that. Because, well, it's, my memory of that area from when I delineated the wetlands, I think a couple times over the years, is there's very little vegetation in that channel. But it's all held together by both the combination of the rocky soil and basically the root mat from all the vegetation around it. So we don't wanna disturb that and destabilize that channel where we know we have concentrated flow at certain times of the year. So
You're saying you get more erosion if we dug deeper?
if you cut deeper, you're gonna just get more erosion, exactly. So,
How deep's the rock?
I'm sorry, what's that?
How deep is the bedrock?
I don't know where the bedrock.
Just wonder how far, if we dug another 4 inches, would we hit rock?
There's lots of rock. whether
Because
it's-
it's at the bottom of a granite hill.
I don't know.
Ledge.
I don't know if it's bedrock there or it's just rock that over the millennia came down the hill.
Is anything in the plan here about supporting that downstream bank? The downhill bank, I should say, as the water flows on the left side? That's the side that blew out and then went through people's lawns. Is there anything that reinforces that side of the bank here, in case there's another rush of water?
I don't know engineering wise what we wanna do there.
Okay.
My thought was we wanna get it back like it was, which I think it sometimes
Some
probably
of
did
us
go.
might have a different opinion.
Right.
On that, if I may. I have one main goal, keep that water off of this gentleman's lawn and everybody else there. Whatever that takes, I'm not concerned about, no offense to anybody watching on TV, but the wetland plants here, I'm concerned about overflow of the bank and ruining these people's yards and getting in their property, as I know Josh is also. So if there's a debate between two sides, let's go for the best drainage and support of that stream versus the plants in that one little corridor. And that's just my opinion. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that or disagree. Welcome.
If I might mention on the site visit we had yesterday, I think Chris might have mentioned, or someone might have mentioned the possibility of just as that sediment's being removed, instead of hauling it all the way out, piling it up on the downslope side of that bank to try and kind of build up some of those banks, especially where it had washed out in this last event. Is that correct? Would that be something that?
That would be something we can look at.
It's not a big engineering feat.
It's not a big
obviously,
engineering
but-
feat. It's a very tough one to say how to do it, only because there's so micro, in the grand scheme of everything, it's a microscopic area. It's very site specific. It changes from day to day. So I think
It's one of those things you have to stand there and
Yeah.
look, you can't even
in
show
that
it
is
on a plan, real.
in that instance, there is a lot of sediment in these areas. Instead of, as Nick said, trucking it off and trying to get it out of the area, there is the possibility that we can, I want to say, build up the berm, if you will, but buffer it.
I was gonna say build up the berm.
Yeah.
Directly, exactly those words. If I were the property owner and you took that dirt away instead of building a berm for me, I'd be bothered. Now, these folks will get to give their own opinion in a few minutes, but that's what I would say. You're taking it where? Why? Why don't we just build that up?
So
What would be the
there's-
reason not to? We just wanna stop that water flow from going over.
So there is the ability to, in those areas, excavate a little bit deeper than original. It's kind of gravelly and hummocky and stuff like that. And placing that excess soil that's from that ditch area up against that, it's called the berm, if you will, and kind of bolster it up a little bit, get a little more hydraulic capacity in it to help alleviate that. I think that would be that's a very specific event, or a process. I think that would have to be coordinated between Chuck and I and Nick to make sure that, one, we're not overstepping our bounds. It's still a wetland area. We don't want to destroy that natural community
We're
as much as it's.
Sir, we are almost destroying homes.
Yes,
Let's
I
deal
know.
with that.
I get that. I completely get that.
There's plenty, everybody, yeah, lot of them have fern gardens in their backyard. He's got one, there's tons of plants there. Let's focus on just the water volume. And at least that's my view. My other fellow commissioners may say something
Well,
else.
I think we just have to be careful, if you're taking that material and putting it there, you just have to make sure we get it stabilized, so it doesn't.
That was my
get
next
burned.
question.
Yeah.
Can rocks be put there, like the nice rocks you have down now, could they be banked along that one bank?
Which nice rocks you're referring to?
The big pile, all those nice big
The
rocks you
riprap?
got.
The riprap?
Yeah, the riprap.
Okay.
Yeah, could
I
it
just-
be?
I didn't know if you meant natural rock or like
Thank
riprap.
Yeah, I mean, you just
Well,
want
I think you'd want some
Dump
rock
trucks,
to
though.
dissipate the energy, I think I would then
Exactly
surface
that.
it with a heavy duty erosion control blanket and get it vegetated as well.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds,
If we're looking to change the direction of flow with a berm, I don't know what is in that other direction, and I wanna make sure we're not taking, the problem from this backyard and shooting it into that
so we're
backyard.
trying to maintain it, actually, Stephanie, into the same ditch that has been there.
Trying
The
to
one
shore-
that's been there
Trying
all
to shore
along
up
and
the lower
beforehand.
side, the downhill side, trying to shore that up a little bit to give it a little bit more of a protection, so that a little bit more volume doesn't crest and then flow downhill. It goes perpendicular to the stream, right? The creek runs across the downslope, and so once that water gets high enough to crest, there's no way it ever gets back into the stream, right? So if you give that a little bit of protection to make sure that if it's gonna err on going out, it goes to the high side and then it goes back in, is
Okay.
way better
Yeah.
than going low and then never coming back. It'll go in his backyard.
We're just trying to prevent it from bopping over into 50 Hillary at that one, right where it turns,
Yes,
the main first turn.
I don't wanna send it into 50 Hillary, I just wanna
I know
make sure
that.
we're not sending it into somebody else's
Agreed.
backyard, that we're doing things in a way that will, minimize sediment transport and allow maximum infiltration, like right there.
Yeah.
And I do think that the winterberry and spice bushes, I haven't been up there in a hot minute, but I think those are a little bit more substantial vegetation than what was up there
They
previously.
certainly are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
those are-
I think is great
Mhm.
for the ultimate stability.
Thank you for the comment. Jim?
How thick is the sediments? What is the purpose of removing it? Will that
So
herb
basically,
life grow up?
Oh, I mean,
up the road?
first, it can be smothering the plant growth. It also could be diverting flow in future storms. And it's also, because it's sitting there unstable, is gonna keep, every time it rains, or spring runoff, it's gonna keep moving further down the system into the, so it's working right at some point, into the storm drain system, we don't want it.
So as you're removing it then, is there some sort of grade that you're trying to maintain?
Trying to maintain what was pre-existing. All the natural soil and that root mat is all, none of that eroded from this, so basically just shoveling the sediment off to get down to that pre-existing soil surface. And I would err on the cautious side, if you have to leave a little thin layer of sediment there, I'd rather do that than disturb that.
I'll go along with that.
Existing
I'm
soil.
more concerned about the downside bank. Because that's when that breaks, that's when we're toast. And right now, there is no drainage ditch because it's all filled in. Is what all the dirt did. So the stream, you can barely see where it is. And you really have to focus to say, oh, that's where it was, kind of.
Yeah, that first 20 or 30.
Yeah, that
right
first-
there is-
that-
It doesn't.
That's the
Right,
problem.
I'm just, so every dig of the shovel, you have to look to see whether you hit to the,
You can be able to tell pretty easily.
It's
That,
changing.
that natural soil there is very solid between the rock and the thick root mat. You're gonna know right where it is.
It's also a totally different color. If you look at it, the sediment's like brown and the soil and that existing soil is like jet black. It's very much different.
Cause all that sediment from the banking that blew out is brought in from elsewhere, correct? So,
Right.
yeah. I'm aware that you guys need to get out of here to make another meeting, but.
This takes precedent.
Okay, okay, I just wanted to state that just in the. Yeah, with the possibility of moving this along too quickly, I just wanted to leave it open for anyone that came from the public that might wanna direct questions to you before you have to get out of here, but if you guys are good to hang around, I mean, if there's more questions from the commission, then we can.
Yeah, we'll get to the public in just a sec here.
Okay, yeah.
I think we're getting close.
Sure.
So I think that we want to add some things to this particular plan as we're talking here. And focus again on the volume movement. Bob?
Well, I think we have a.
Oh, we're gonna ask the audience as soon as we go with
I have a
commissioner.
comment too, but I wanna let him.
Commissioners come first, sir.
Oh, commissioners come first?
Yeah, absolutely, that is the protocol. Then we're gonna open it to the audience and so on. And then you get another chance.
My support is with my commissioners too, though. I like this idea, except I think I'd like to take it a little further. Of course, my concern is, again, the homeowner and the way this has happened twice now. We wanna avoid it from happening again, of course. We see the events, we can do it and it doesn't, so. And with a lot of development, you know, maybe this is just one house, but the roads, you know, it's over 300 people up. It's a long road. Usually with developments like this, there's a basin, there's a catch basin, they have an area where the water will settle out on a
Storm
rush
drain pond.
and then either go over or, you know,
Infiltration basin.
yeah.
Well,
Can we
retention and
think about-
retention.
cutting more back into the hill property, making more of a basin down there too, that won't, you know, go up over, cause I think a natural grade just took it right into his yard, deflected off a 10-foot tree that had fell down, and then another tree further down its natural flow and caused, you know, scaling over to the property. It's that, and again, the water will go after that, you know, but if we slow it down, and most events this won't happen, but I'm thinking, not only in this area, you know, below where we're talking about that, you know, we lost. I'm thinking even on the other side of up above on the west side of the road, can we take more of an area up there?
Chris, do you wanna say something?
Yes, I will. So as I stated earlier, the upgrading portion of this area, our quote unquote watershed, if you will, it's almost exclusively ledge and hard packed hill, which means once water hits it, it absorbs a little bit, but once it hits it and hits saturation, it's almost like a fire hydrant going off. There's a lot of water coming down this hill. Volumetrically, you're looking on the order of over 2.5 acre feet of water going to, let's say, the catch basin at the end of the vacant lot in Hillary. That's a lot of water. The Hillary Road subdivision has a systemic issue of that the drainage system wasn't designed appropriately back in the 60s because nobody cared back then. But it is a systemic issue because of the volume of water coming off this hill. So the ability for a single landowner building their home to install a basin is a significant basin to accommodate that flow. And it's not just a gradual 2.5 acres. It's like a shotgun coming out of the hill of water. It's a lot of water. So
I can see it.
I
He
appreciate
basically lives at the bottom of a waterfall.
Any basin that was built would fill like that, and then it's no good anymore.
And then also there's a huge
I counted like 5 significant rivulets coming down that whole thing. I mean, I understand that. Were you able to get to your part of your modifications of what you were gonna propose to help this issue, or?
So for the modifications to the berm, I think we kind of touched base on it. We could take the excess soil from the ditch or the intermittent channel, place it along the shoulder of that, kind of build it up a little bit further, and then I think a combination of maybe some additional woody shrub plantings similar to what we're doing elsewhere in the major restoration area, combined with leaf litter and try to get that area stabilized.
You might go for rock, that might please this commission more, if you put rock on that back bank and really, because what I'm picturing here is if you've got the current pathways to get the water down below the hill there. If it's still too direct into one spot, you might have to put in more crossways. If that bank can hold up and direct that water flow, again, it's the same volume of water, from the storm, once it's wet. If you can keep that bank strong enough so it doesn't cross over into these yards, we're good.
Yes.
But if that bank doesn't work, then we'll probably ask for something else. I think that may be the better solution. But make it good and strong so it doesn't blow out with the next 100-year storm. Last time I knew we had a 100-year storm every 5-10 years or something these days, so that's your business, but go ahead, sir.
So just going off of that, I just wanna remind the commission again that our role is not to propose solutions for the applicants to present to us. It's up to the applicant to present things, and then we accept that. We shouldn't be proposing specific.
Different.
We shouldn't be requiring specific proposals like that, because then it's our solution and we're kind of on
Okay,
the.
so what would I do? Vote against it and say I would vote against unless there's rocks? How do I express that?
So I mean, it needs to
build
be.
it up or imply
Yeah, we could-
otherwise.
I would be more comfortable with, saying that we need, we would like to see something like a
I
strong
would like to see
bank.
it stronger.
Yeah, something.
And with that, so that leads me into my next comment relative to rock versus not rock. Rock is porous when it's in the large boulders that are currently on the side of the slope.
Right.
It doesn't help with much with water. So typically when we build berms and say a detention basin or a retention basin or anything like that, there's a core that's effectively almost impervious. It's denser material, less voids within the soil to help create a quote unquote barrier berm. So that's why I'm saying maybe not put stone immediately along the channel to kind of build it up. Taking the fill material that's currently now within the wetland system, placing that around and then armoring it with additional stone would be the more advantageous route.
I think that sounds like what I'm saying.
It's-
I don't
it's-
necessarily the same size, but rocks to keep
Yes.
to diffuse the impact of the water hitting it, so those soil particles behind the rocks stay there. I'm not talking about water can go through it or not.
Correct.
It's just to hold up the soil
Yes.
and make it tall, really tall.
So we can do that to some extent, but I think that, and like I said earlier, that's a very site-specific situation that we can't really design on a macro level. We have to do it on a micro level. So that would be something that would be coordinated between myself and Nick. Just saying, this is where we want to do it. This is how we want to build it up, make it level, build some extra capacity in that channel so that it doesn't break out, and at the end of the day, make sure that that thing is stable and not going anywhere. So that's, I think it's something that we can easily accommodate, and obviously I'm speaking on
The
that.
means and methods typically would follow the engineer.
Means and methods
You
would be,
understood what we're looking for, or what
yes.
some of us at least will look for after that if it doesn't work.
Correct. So
Okay.
I think that is
The
something
message
that,
is clear.
I guess from my perspective, what's the advantage of going up versus down in between the two? So you
it
have
would
a
be a
channel that's fairly
combination.
shallow, right?
It would be a combination too.
One advantage is once that spot, when you dug down, it will fill in quickly with sediment, and you want that other extra.
So we would actually create a hydraulic gradient through that channel. So there wouldn't be a pool. Pools are bad.
Yeah, it should flow.
It would be the straight flow line and stuff like that. So that, like I said, it's means and methods that are up to us, or would be reviewed with Nick on the field. But what we would do is we, excavate the channel a little bit more, get a little bit extra capacity going negatively, and then armoring it and increasing that berm a little bit positively. So it's a give and take of the two based on what the site conditions are, because until we get out there, it's very difficult to say one way or the other which way we want to go. I don't want to say we're going to go up and then issues arose, but I don't want to say go down because I don't know what's underneath the ground. So I think, but we understand the intent of the commission and where they're wanting to go. So if the commission is
I think ultimately is to increase capacity
Yes.
Capacity and
and
stability of the downhill
fortification
side.
of that, right? To maintain that structure.
Because that capacity will change and it will decrease quickly. But you gotta keep the wall up. So Nick was appropriate to bring up that I shouldn't be suggesting a design standard so much as a performance standard, which I think I just made clear from my view.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a better way of putting it.
Jim,
Yeah, Nick is right.
Jim.
I wasn't trying to do your job, but unfortunately, the wetlands have been, violated. And I wanna point out too, though, part of the wetlands is amphibians. You know, you have frogs, snakes, you know, lizards, everything is in there, salamander, whatever is in there was in there. And that's what we're trying to protect, not you guys do your job, and hopefully next time we'll take care of the homeowner and the little guys.
Jim?
Thank you.
Is the entire berm drainage swale within your property, Josh, or is it on the?
It is.
So you can build up the downhill side without asking permission.
No, not the entire duration of that channel. Are you talking about the channel, the intermittent stream? No, that's not entirely. Some of it crosses the ends, and some of it is part of the empty lot that's in between 50 and
And so
32.
where would the repairs be necessary?
Yeah, there would be a butters.
And,
There would be a butters that have to give permission. That's part of the.
All right.
It's in this.
okay,
Chuck had outlined that as part of the number 2 under the general, which is to get permission from the abutters to do that. To get permission under the general at the top on number 2, item number 2 at the top.
Can we look good for a moment?
okay, I'm sorry, I didn't notice that. That's an important aspect of this.
I'd like to,
The entirety of the repair would be on Josh's property, 50 Hillary, and the empty lot at 7A on Hillary. So those 3 parcels.
It's still called 7A.
so with that discussion completed for the moment, I'd like to turn to the audience and see if anybody here has any questions or comments. Please state your name and address, sir.
Ian Frazier from 50 Hillary Road. Chris, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, gentlemen. Sorry. Chuck, thank you guys both for coming, really appreciate it, explaining everything. Couple concerns on my end. The storm was really bad. This isn't the first time it's overflowed though, since the project had started. This all started coming to be back in late April, where we had an issue. This storm was bad, but it was a problem before then as well. It wasn't a problem before the construction started. So even though there's a lot of rainwater coming down, and the basin is supposedly not up to code, they handled the rain before. 2,
If I
Yes.
may, you mean that ditch handled most all the water?
yeah, I had never had water that came down into my,
Well, some would get in your property, you've got a drainage ditch there. So
on
some's
that,
gonna-
yeah, so it always came down the ditch, right? It never came down my
But
embankment,
not
which
your
you see,
backyard.
right, where all the mulch and all the rock is flowing into.
There's other property draining to your ditch that goes down the side of your property.
Correct,
Right,
yes.
so you needed that anyway.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So the streams have always been there, absolutely. However, we've never had this issue before, in terms of just washing away the embankment, flooding the patio, flooding the deck. We had sediment, then this past Friday, another storm washed away the right side if you're facing our house, the right side, due to completely overflowing.
Which storm?
So we had another storm this past Friday. So we originally had a storm Sunday.
Sunday,
Right.
little rain Monday.
Yep,
when I
Yep,
saw it.
and then that's when the construction started, the rain on Monday, or the construction on Monday started, correct?
What construction?
So there was a lot of,
Of the
when the, yeah, on the,
Yes.
when the
Tuesday.
driveway blew out, right?
Tuesday.
So Tuesday, so Sunday the storm happened, aftermath was assessed on Monday, the construction happened on Tuesday. It was the worst it's ever been on Friday.
Well, we know why that happened, right?
Why?
That's, okay, so the sediment that blew out
Mhm.
choked the normal channel of the creek.
Okay.
We were told.
Yep.
At the time, after that first storm on Sunday.
Mhm.
Per the guidance of the commission.
Yep.
That we could not clean out anything beyond the perimeter of the wetland.
Okay, understood.
Which that creek
We did
was
have that
essentially choked. It was flat
Mhm.
to the top, right? There was no place for it to go. So that water, rather than flowing in the normal channel, where it went to the left, and then there was no coming back. And that's when I called you, that's
Yep.
when I called Nick, and I said, because I realized that none of the water, all of the storm, none of the water was going into the channel.
Yep.
And I was like, do I dig this thing out with a shovel? You know, what do I do to kind of like get the thing
Yeah.
going again? And, you know,
Understood. Okay,
so that was
Yep.
what caused that, and
Right.
it's a cascading
okay,
effect of one thing caused, okay, we gotta hold and investigate this, oh crap, we have another storm,
Mhm.
and that didn't continue with its normal path. It
okay,
was completely redirected,
Yep.
all entirely to your backyard.
Okay.
And similarly to the first one, which was those trees, in
Yep.
my opinion. Those trees kind of directed it that way.
Mhm.
That was less though, some water was still getting through. In this case, out of the, from my perspective, like 95% of the water was getting completely redirected out of the creek.
Okay.
Down the hill, and that's why you saw that significant volume of
Okay.
water.
Alright,
Yep.
well, we're looking forward to the changes.
Yes.
I witnessed that too, I verified what he's saying, but maybe it was a little 75-25, but close enough.
We're in the ballpark.
Yeah, thank you.
And please keep us posted
Of course.
as this work gets done. We wanna know if and when it goes over.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Ladies, do you have anything to add?
I would,
Okay, you don't have to. That's okay.
I would like to just point out, just because Ian and everyone else is here, this would be part of the repairs, but walking up from the stairs that had the waterfall coming down them, when you're walking up the stairs, like off to the right, like near the upper end of that channel that goes down the side of the driveway, you can see one of those big pools of sediment that where it got
Okay.
blocked off, and it looks like that's where one of the diversions was coming off of. So I think that one specifically, I think, was responsible for the stairway. But so just wanted to point that out. I don't know how much you've been walking around. and checking
Chris,
it
did you wanna add something else?
Nope, I just wanted to bring in, I know we've been saying channels and stuff like that, I just wanna make sure the commission, the members who have not been part of the original filing have a semblance of an idea of what we're talking about and where. So, this is the corner of the site that had the breakout, this is the pipe, that, got inundated. And the breakout of the actual landslide occurred pretty much right through here, which filled in all of the wetland series from probably around flag 8, flag 2, all the way to flag 7, and obliterated that channel that was there. So what we're proposing as part of the remediation, if the commission is amenable to, which I'm again feeling very much so, would be to reestablish the hydraulic line that was once upon a time here before the landslide occurred, hauling out that material, using the mini excavator to excavate this area and do the additional plantings in this corner of the world. And as we go down the line, there was the original channel. Certain areas were generally lower in nature by a few inches here and there, and what happened was the storm would fill up the channel and then break out. And then at this point in time, there's sediment all over the place because of these naturally low curve points. So what we would potentially do, based on site conditions, would be to take that material out, bolster up that berm on the lower side going towards number 50 Ian's property, armoring that and getting that more stable than it currently is. There's no substantial vegetation in that corner, so I think plantings in coordination with that method with additional armor protection that's needed to increase that capacity to make sure it keeps flowing down the hill like it originally was. That's what we would do based on site conditions, and what we see when we get in there.
When? How soon? Okay,
Okay, hold
I
on.
accept that.
Hold on, yeah, hold on.
But moderately quickly, as soon as possible. Obviously,
that one.
Which part are we talking about? Because there's kind of two phases.
Any of it that protects Mr. Ian's property.
Well, the first one is to get that channel. That's
You
a
gotta
very,
get your channel down, then you gotta deal with the bank. Gotta get your channel
well,
back though,
then there's
right?
three things.
Okay.
Getting the channel back in use is one.
Right.
That's like, that caused 90% of the problem, right? So getting that back open is first. Second is the sediment, third is reinforcement. So the sediment also has to be cleared out, and the reinforcement
Sediment
probably
beyond the
beyond the, oh
the
yeah, yeah.
ditch, just stuff on the side that's gonna fill in with it right away? Is that why?
No, because it's reduced the capacity, because in those places.
Oh, I
where
thought your first one was clean the stream out. That's
just the entrance to where there's like sediment is essentially choked the entire channel.
Right.
Where that's really, really heavy, it's, you know, 6,
Clean it
7 feet
out.
across, 20 feet long, and the channel's pretty much like, oh, there it is over there, because everything else is flat.
Right.
That's what we're talking about, cleaning that out to get that channel back into being used.
So typically with remediation projects, especially when it's around a saturated area, hydraulically, you wanna start from the top and work your way down. So we would start up in this area, getting this area reestablished as much as possible to eliminate the immediate impact upon number 50. Get that going and get that stabilized, and then work our way down the stream. Only because you don't wanna be cleaning this out, get this all nice looking pretty, and then all of a sudden start playing over here, get the sediment kicked up and have it migrate down and redo all the work. So we would start, it's not the intent to dilly-dally and wait until drier season. It's the intent to get moving as quickly as humanly possible. It's a concern from Josh's perspective to be the good neighbor, fix the issue as quickly as possible. So we're not intending on waiting until say November to work on it. It's gonna be a moderately quickly process to get that going as soon as we can get machined.
Speaking of as quickly as possible, in terms of power equipment that you can use down there was some talk in here of not using it and digging out. Are there places where you could possibly use power diggers that would
That would be
this
the
over?
intention, just
That would be in the immediate area
How
around.
about the rest of it? Would it be possible? You
The
really
topog-
want to avoid it.
You want to avoid that. The topography is incredibly steep. You'll do more damage than good.
Okay, I just want to give you the leeway to do this as fast as you can get to
I
it.
think there's some, as Chris said, as you go down that channel, there's 3 or 4 places where it, to me, it was kind of surprising, it overflowed on the low side, even though you're in the well-defined channel where there wasn't that big buildup of sediment. So I think some of that sediment that's further down the ditch can be piled on that, I guess, east side of the ditch.
Downhill side.
To create a little bit,
East side.
Ian
Part
side.
of the embankment.
Ian side,
Hillary
yes,
side.
to create a little bit more defined channel through there.
Mr. Ian, if they're, part of that might be along your property, are you okay with them putting dirt on your side of that ditch to burn it
Whatever
up?
solves the problem, sir. Whatever solves the
Okay,
problem.
you got verbal permission.
We'll
Okay.
reach out.
Do we have any other questions, comments?
is there, like, I'm used to when I'm walking around in the parks department obviously has, with hiking trails and stuff, a lot of times they have to do fortification of things to prevent erosion.
Yeah.
A lot of times I see things that are natural in elements.
Mhm.
There's a lot of downed logs in that area, some of them we know have even crossed the stream and caused problems. Can we locate those logs
You
along
could.
the edge and kind of use that as a reinforcement?
Any of my fellow commissioners can correct me if they have a different opinion. You can do whatever you need to do to get stuff out of there to help fix it. Ian's property, please. You can
Okay.
move trees, you can move plants, you can move dirt, get the ditch back. Anybody want to add to that or disagree?
There are some obstructions in that ditch where
There are.
if we're normally if we're dealing with a natural stream, the things you want there.
Should what?
It's, if we were dealing with a natural stream, you'd like those obstructions there. They're slowing the water down, they're providing habitat. In this case, we have an unnatural stream that
Clogs it up like it does in the street where
And if
when
it
they
doesn't,
leave
if we don't
leaves
keep the
and
water flowing,
sticks.
it's impacting Ian's property.
Yes.
So I think some of those obstructions there that I think our inclination normally would be to leave alone, we probably
You can get them
get
out. You can make it big, deep,
Okay.
big high wall, strong.
I mean,
What else to tell you?
Nick, you have to admit, we've had this conversation.
Yes.
I have been saying like for a long time that I felt like we needed to reinforce the creek. I didn't like the fact that we had this ticking time bomb
It's-
of a low capacity creek that's right at the base
It
of
had
the
no
huge
chance
mountain.
Sunday.
Right.
No
Yep.
chance.
No.
Mr. Karen, I apologize if I focused a little more on stormwater than
No.
wetlands than you anticipated tonight,
That's
but your help has been appreciated. Any other thoughts from anybody else here before we? Okay, Nick, do you have a recommendation? What do we do at this point?
So I would recommend, well, firstly, we do need to ratify the enforcement order because I issued it just on my own. So when the agent issues an enforcement order, it's legitimate as long as at the following meeting, the majority of the commission agrees to votes and signs it. So we should hold a vote to ratify that enforcement order, which includes everything that we went over today, which is that short-term stabilization, which is already done, and then the proposal for restoration, which we just went over.
That
So
includes the violation, that enforcement order?
yes, yeah.
Includes the violation? Take a motion.
I'll make a motion to
Thank you.
support that.
Jim has made that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay, I'll take the rest of the commission's vote by roll call. Bob Secord
Aye.
and Richard Gulick.
Aye.
Okay, so that enforcement order is ratified, and then, yeah, I don't know if we need to hold a vote really, but unless anyone, if anyone has any objections or anything else they'd like to add to.
Could I
Josh.
ask you a question? I just wanna make sure that I'm clear. I kinda get the spirit of what we're trying to do, and I'm trying to kinda quantify that, because we're gonna have to make decisions that might be a little one way or another, and I'm just trying to make sure that we're following the spirit of what we want. Is there a way that we
Fix
kind
it well,
of, okay,
that work?
and so we have some liberties of like, things that are in the channel, make them to where they'll work long-term fine. Don't go beyond where we need to get things reinforced and clean things up.
And just stay in touch with me, and
Sure.
that's basically all I
Yeah.
say.
Did you say don't go far out, or?
Well, I mean, keep it to where it's fortified but close. You don't wanna like have a 15-foot like path if we don't need to, unless
No.
there's something else.
Oh,
trying to-
if you had a 15-foot wide stream that was really deep, I think we'd be probably
We
really happy.
wouldn't be talking here, right? This wouldn't be an issue.
So that's, I get the spirit of what you're trying to get to.
If I may, before you go on, in terms of the depth, it only matters so much. You gotta have a stream, but again, the deeper it goes, once it fills, it's.
Yeah, so I understand what's the word I want to use, the goal that the commission. Spirit, that's the word I wanted. I understand the spirit. I wanna be very careful with how far we go with that spirit. So that's why, I think we should amend, or when the commission votes on the restoration process, we would like to make an addition to that the channel be fortified and reinforced and enlarged. Means and methods to be determined in the field in conjunction with Nick's cooperation and any commission members who are around at that point in time.
You might let us know sometimes when you're down
I mean,
If it's iffy at all, I'll be sure.
No,
Back down
I
and
do
check.
really appreciate that. I know that Dr. Gulick is very gung ho on just do whatever you want, get it done. That is not everybody's opinion. Some of us will still care about vegetation and aquatic
Well,
species.
as I said, so do I. I mean, to be honest,
Yeah, I can tell that you guys.
I've genuinely tried to keep the spirit of things with also the caution of neighbors and being,
Yes.
a good neighbor. So
Yeah, we do want it done, quickly. We understand the importance of this, but I do appreciate bringing a delicate nature to it and understanding that this is a sensitive receptor and wanting to do this, in a way that's long-term effective, but also respectful of the boundary that we are here to protect.
Correct, yes, that's our end game goal, is to make sure we're not going, I don't wanna put an engineered ditch through the wetland.
Correct.
Yes,
That's
thank
my
you.
end game.
But
So,
I wouldn't do that anyway. Like that's not that, we'll work together to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, and anyone rebut this, but as I understand it, the aim of the commission is to restore the original flow channel of the stream as it was before, and where it can be improved on that downslope bank, improve it to, increase that capacity and allow it to continue down that channel for as long as possible. That's the
Yes, that's my understanding of what the engineers are planning to do.
in a responsible manner.
Yes.
Right.
You say where it can be, but it does need that improvement in this zone where this flow is concentrated. That's where it shouldn't be the same as it used to be, because that'll keep failing. It needs to be better than it used to be.
It's always that risk, right? There's always that risk.
Oh, yeah.
Right there, right? So, no, I'm saying,
But
like,
needs to
if
be
we
better
don't,
than
if
it
we don't
was.
do anything to make it better, we're just continue to have the same risk.
Yeah.
Because that
Yes, we
area
will.
does change a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I walk through there every couple of weeks and different trees have fallen in different places and different branches have collected and clogged up, and
Yeah.
it's always gonna be changing. And so if we're just spot on that perfect, then it's gonna take a week and then that will no longer be perfect anymore, there'll be something else. I just don't wanna be at a point where it's so close to breaching that every time it rains, if I'm not there, if I'm out of town, if something happens, like I just can't take that kind of, I don't think that it's realistic to have that expectation that I'd be there to react every time it rains, to monitor, did a tree branch fall, did a log get in the way? Like if Ian's calling and saying something's down, then something had to have happened, I think, other than just the creek said its natural working state, something had to have interfered with that. But obviously I'm gonna try and prevent that as much as I can, but we're working against gravity in this case.
So we don't need a vote for this? We've given
just,
opinions, and you have differing opinions, but that's okay.
Just to issue the enforcement order, as long as we're all in agreement that the applicant and his contractors will be in touch with me throughout the process, and I will come to the commission with any edge cases that I'm not totally sure of.
So we're supporting the plan as discussed and modified.
With some of the amendments that Chris,
What we can do is we can amend that restoration to include the means and methods and the channel buffering up and stuff like that.
Right.
That way it's in writing.
That would be
The
nice,
commission
thank
can
you.
act upon that. I think for my client's own protection, if you will, I would prefer
Yeah.
a vote, just to say that we're all in agreement with this process.
Sure.
So that we don't come back, say if several members leave and new members come in.
Right.
What do you propose, Nick?
So, yeah, we can hold a vote to show our approval of the removal and restoration sequence as presented with some of the amendments that we discussed today, like the building up of the bank and such.
Including a rewriting of the plan with
Yep.
some of that.
Yes.
I might even give you a couple of edits on it to suggest.
Sure.
I do that, I
Yeah.
can't help.
You can't,
Don't pay
yeah, you can't
attention,
help.
Chuck, it's just incorrect.
Alright, yep, so, yeah,
Anything else? Okay, so
I would recommend that we hold that vote.
was that clear enough for commissioners to make a motion?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Stephanie. Is there a second? Okay, seconded by Jim. Thank you.
And Jen, I'll take the rest of the commission's vote by roll call, Bob Seacard
Aye.
and Richard Gulick.
Aye.
Alright. So we've accepted your restoration sequence with some of the changes we discussed.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Karen.
Does this allow Josh to continue
So yeah, there
construction?
so there is no cease and desist at this time. On the general project, DEP file number 199-1147. I don't personally see the purpose or utility of a cease and desist. The site is it's disturbed site-wide and he's in the process of building the house, so the sooner that gets done, the sooner the entire site can get stabilized, and this blowout had nothing to do with what the active construction on site is, so.
Thank
Yeah, this turned out to be a different reason, as I learned today, than I thought it had been, in terms of the design of that pipe getting so much rock around it.
It went well, Chris. It's okay.
If you go downstairs and ask Dean, he'll come back up and help you.
So it was an underground hydraulic situation that was unfortunate, but was part of the design, I guess, as to how it happened, something recommended by the pipe manufacturer, I believe.
Yeah.
It's, yes, sir.
I have a question that's unrelated to what we just approved, but we've talked a number of times about involving DPW at some point. Are they being involved? Like, is that on us to reach out to them?
So, like I said, I've reached out to them about the ordinance question and
Not so much about the stormwater ordinance, but about the,
Storm system.
about the, the upgrades that really should be made on Hillary Road.
so the major upgrades that need to be done are very expensive and there's just not a will in the city or the funding to address all of that. Like Rich was saying, there are some questions of like the contours of the road that might be an easier fix. That I need to discuss more with DPW,
For Hillary.
for Hillary
I
Road.
understand
Yeah,
that.
if there's more regular like street cleaning or if there
Right.
could be some like regrouping in the road, just something. It seems like there is room for improvement here that would alleviate some of this issue and I don't know who that falls on to have that discussion with them.
Ask Nick to do that, have that discussion as our agent with DPW. And look at those particular storm drains. Maybe they could put a berm around the one at the bottom of 50. Something like that. And homeowners can help by helping move, things out of the street. That doesn't help us coming down. It's a really separate thing.
Yeah.
Just the water in Hillary. Thank you, gentlemen. We're good to go.
Thank you.
We still have something more on this subject, so hold your seat yet tight, because we are now sliding into the Bobrek analysis update. You guys can go if you want,
I mean, yeah.
but we're gonna talk next about
Stan.
the second engineer who we were hiring to review the current work. Nick?
Yeah, so not a ton to report, just that I've been in touch with John Bulbrick. He was away on vacation most of last week. I talked to him yesterday and he's back and he informed me that he's gonna be beginning his review of all the documents and the videos that I sent him from the meetings over the last few months. He's gonna start reviewing that this week and he'll be in touch with me about a site visit probably if not the end of this week, then next week. Yeah, that's where we're at right now. And I've asked him to just stay in touch with me once he's
kind of worked his way through most of those documents and is ready to begin the other work to just stay in touch with me with what he's doing and yeah, make sure that he's hitting all the points that the commission would like.
Questions, commissioners? Anybody else have a question on that analysis?
It was nothing else, that was just the complete scope, was just the Harwood Terrace kind of property.
Just yep, your site, everything
It
else.
feels like if we were gonna have an engineer look at like the water in the area, that like that continuation of kind of what's happening further.
I personally have recommended that the city do that and look at the West Street and the Hillary Road. I did not believe all of that was necessarily our particular applicant's fault.
Right.
What's happening over here is a different question.
Sure.
But the overall issue of all that water coming down the hill of the street doesn't fall to us.
I mean, we're having to throttle water, right? We're gonna throttle back water because it can't handle it further downstream. So, that's an important consideration as well. It's like, yeah, we can get water down so that it's not a problem, for anybody, but then it just floods West Street.
What we're looking
That's
at
about
is related to the violation that we have and how that relates to the work that was approved on your property.
Gotcha, okay.
So
that's good.
what,
Yeah.
so like specifically, how are you contributing?
Yeah.
And how can we fix, if anything is being caused by this development, how can that be avoided?
Okay.
Because we know that other problem exists and that is not your responsibility.
Thank you,
To fix.
Stephanie.
Yep.
So,
Thank
and of the two proposals, the one we accepted is the one that did not extend further down that pathway.
Yeah.
We wanna focus on the issue that we need to get fixed right here. Not take on a bigger citywide issue.
Right. It's not that it's not
Okay.
a problem, it's just that it's a separate problem.
Yes.
Understood, thank you.
And related, yes, sir. Okay, thank you for that, everybody.
Just, when we guys get to that sidewalk, let us know. We'll make ourselves.
With Bobrook.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm sure he'll be in touch with you
Uh,
to hear about the
if he
original
needs
design.
anything from me, Nick, you got my number.
Thank you.
Nick,
Absolutely.
if we could, I'm gonna be out of town Thursday, Friday, but if we could, I'd love to, be on site.
Yep. I
That
will,
is- that'd be great.
I will be sure to let him know.
Next week.
So,
It'll probably be next week, but if he says that, I'll let him know that.
thank you, gentlemen.
Alright,
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ian,
you.
thanks for
Thank you
stopping by
guys,
again.
really appreciate it.
No
Yeah,
problem, man.
Our apologies for what has happened here.
It happens.
It's
We're gonna fix.
cost a little bit of sleep for some of us who were there originally, so see what we can do to get it done.
I appreciate the efforts.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
very much. Take care.
Our next item is a continued hearing. I'm not gonna read it into the record because we're not gonna do anything on it. Is that okay, Nick?
Yeah.
And Nick's just gonna fill us in on the View Street area. Is that why you're here? Okay, we're on the View Street.
Excellent.
It's a single family house and associated work. Lot one.
Yes. So it is actually, that is a typo from the original, when we first opened this hearing. It is a duplex that is being constructed, just to clarify that for the record.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
So up until this afternoon, this project didn't have a DEP file number or comments issued to it. However, at 2:26, I received an email that DEP had reviewed it and issued comments. I can read those into the record.
Well, since if.
Not if.
Well, we can just
Not if
basically,
I haven't opened it.
Right.
yeah, so
Thank you.
So basically, DEP issued their number and comments, but the comments, without getting into it, addressed some points that Carl is gonna have to bring information on and respond to. So
Okay,
with that being issued this afternoon, he didn't have enough time to respond to it, so I asked him to just come in August 8th with Anthony Cleves from Haley Ward, which is the engineering company that's doing the work for him, to review those comments and just basically be able to respond to them.
I'm starting to think we should open this up. Read them in, see if anybody has comments.
Sure.
Okay, to make it a little more formal then. Pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, the Leominster Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on a notice of intent for the construction of a duplex house and associated site work in a wetland buffer zone and riverfront area of Newsnack Brook. Address View Street, Lot 1, map of parcel 123-14-1. The DEP file number was received today. Do you have that for us, please, Nick?
Yeah, so the DEP file number is 199-1180.
199-1180.
Yeah.
Nick, you mentioned that DEP has provided some comments. Could you please read them into the record?
So the comments are as follows, quote, "It does not appear that the proposed project meets the performance standards for work in riverfront area found in 310 CMR 10.58 4D1. In order to meet
Sorry,
these."
can you?
Say that one more time.
So
We all tried.
Yeah, sorry, it's 310 CMR 10.58 parentheses 4 parentheses D parentheses 1.
Okay.
Alright, so it continues, in order to meet these standards, a minimum of 100 feet of undisturbed vegetation must be provided and impacts to riverfront area cannot exceed 10% of the riverfront area on the lot. If this lot with identical dimensions was in existence prior to August 7th, 1996, alteration of 5,000 square feet of riverfront area may be allowed, or 310 CMR 10.58 parentheses 4 parentheses D parentheses 3 may allow the construction of a single family home. In addition, the units recently built on Lot 2 View Street combined with the 2 units proposed on Lot 1 and any anticipated development on Lot 123-27 to the south require that the Massachusetts stormwater standards be met to the maximum extent practicable. The applicant should explain how the boundaries of the riverfront area were established on the property. Was the mean annual high water delineated in the field? And that is the entirety of the comments.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You want to give us a brief summary in civilian English?
Yeah, so basically, the Wetland Protection Act allows for up to 10% of up to 10% of the riverfront area of a lot to be developed, or up to 5,000 square feet of it, whichever is greater in certain circumstances. And basically, the plan that's been presented to us exceeds disturbance of that area by more than 10%. As I recall, it's something more like 25%. So the alteration to that riverfront area, which is the 200 feet within like distance from the stream, more than 10% of that is being proposed for development, so that violates that standard. And
So high up on that hill, it does seem odd.
yeah, but
It is what it is.
yeah, as it's written, it violates that standard. And additionally, they point out that the other lot, lot 2, lot 2, which is the developed lot that's more up on the hill, higher upland from lot 1, which is the lot in question. That has a duplex which is basically identical to the one that's being proposed on lot 1. And DEP just points out that if we take the entirety of this site as a development project, which we should if it's all being developed, it develops eventually at some point, that existing duplex along with the duplex being proposed and a 5th possible development on an adjacent lot would trigger the stormwater standards, which say any subdevelopment of 5 or more houses or units means that the stormwater standard should apply, which would entail things like detention basins and other mitigating factors.
So that reminds us, of course, of your backyard from
Yes.
when you first got involved. But my question there is, we were told to keep these very separate.
Yeah, I believe I made this exact comment about
I
what
think
about future
so.
subdivisions.
Right, I asked the question too, he's got all this property, and we're only giving him that much credit
Yeah.
for just developing this parcel.
So that is
Yeah.
correct. So that is all correct. You did mention that before, and I applaud you for your vision there.
Nice try.
Yeah. Foresight. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. But it's still my understanding that if he's only proposing 4 units at this point, which is the case with the existing duplex and the proposed duplex, stormwater standards still would not apply. If he then goes on to propose
this fifth unit in the same area, then then stormwater standards would be triggered and we would address it there. I'm gonna follow up with DEP on this, I haven't had a chance to, as this just came out today. But that's my understanding of it.
So my understanding of the comments you got is that there was two issues. One relates to the percent of land within this area that is being developed. And then the second applies to the stormwater if they were continue to develop, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
I'll just read.
so regardless of the stormwater, it would still be rejected based on the percentage of the property that is being developed.
Yeah, the riverfront area issue is its own
Yes.
separate issue that could halt this, yeah.
Or possibly go to a single family.
No,
They said that there was an exception to 4D3 that would allow a single family.
yeah, I need to follow up on that as well. I think there's also a question of when the lot was laid out, which we've heard from Carl, the property owner, a number of times that the lot has been laid out since like the 40s or 50s, something like that. I would expect him now with these comments especially to provide some sort of evidence of that,
Okay.
just to make sure that we're
Yeah,
Keeping
laid
them
out
up to
in
the-
his mind or laid out?
right, yeah, just to make sure that we're following the correct standards per when the lot was laid out.
The 5,000 square feet that's allowed.
Mhm.
Is there dimensions associated with that? I mean, could he have 10 by 500 feet or
Yep.
100 by 50 feet?
It just says the 5,000 square feet, yeah, there's no specification beyond that.
So as of now, we don't know if this will even be possible to approve or not.
Correct.
Okay, until we hear more. Anybody else, anything from the commissioners?
That's it, thank you.
You know, I remember about Cal DeMassa talking about that date.
Yeah.
So he will now have to show evidence of that.
Yeah, I would like to see that, yeah, just to make sure that we're applying the correct standards.
Because I wasn't sure if he was referring to just the road or.
I think he was referring to that lot specifically, along with the road.
If I recall correctly, the engineer for that project mentioned that there was some exemption because of the 1940-ish dates, and I disagreed with that because
Yeah.
this is an action that's happening now, and that's subject to the act, period. Doesn't matter when the property was bought, divided out, as far as I understood from the law. So this, see it as. Do you have any questions, thoughts, comments? You've been very patient waiting through that other very watered down discussion. Can we help you ladies?
Well, my name is Sarah Rasmus and I actually I own the house at 59 Grandview, which would be, I guess, the third option. The first lot, I guess, is behind my neighbors and then the other one's 2 houses up. But I don't know how he's gonna prove that he had that all thought out. More than I know that there was supposed to be a road, but I've owned the house. My husband owned the house before me, his parents owned the house before him, and his aunt and uncle owned the house before his mother. So it's been in our family for at least, 40 years?
I'm trying to picture which house. It's
Yeah, Eric was 10,
not
so
the
40
duplex.
years.
Which one are they?
Are you talking,
And we're at the base.
What's the address, miss?
59 Grandview. We're at the base of the
59
hill.
Grandview.
Right at the corner.
Yes,
Okay.
we have the corner
40,
lot.
you're saying,
40 years we've been,
40
one of our, for my ex-husband's parents own the house. 40
time period
40
total
years,
is.
then 40 years total for the 3 of us to own.
The uncle, the
No,
parents, the
100.
husband, ex-husband, and
Well,
now.
Eric was 10, so he's 55.
I think I got that right.
Carl's
Helen
saying
owned it
he's
before
open
then,
for
yeah.
So do you have any
So
concerns
he's talking about their house.
Yeah, their house. Do you have any concerns about this particular proposal, this particular house and project?
It was a little bizarre when they were creating it, like, it looks like it's almost just fill. Like, it doesn't look like it's stable, but, I mean, that's,
I understand your impression.
we were just
Okay.
afraid that it was, if you build a house, it's gonna go down into the
Awesome.
water.
Also, Thus why we very quickly had them plant grass, and it grew very well on that bank, because that bank was just dirt. And we looked at this and said, oh my goodness, this is not what we like, and the owner immediately had that grass sprayed in, and I guess it grew well, and it's a perennial mix, so it should hold that slope better.
So it'd be interesting.
But in order to get a building permit, they would have to provide how compacted the soil is for the foundation.
Any other- Go ahead.
Sorry, I visited the site quite frequently and specifically on this July 16th date that Josh was having his issues up there on Harwood Drive. And that there was a breakthrough about 6 feet underneath the siltation fence. Yeah, it carried the siltation underneath. There was about a foot gap underneath and washed away. And a lot of people had trouble that day, you know,
Oh, yeah.
I understand. And, I haven't looked to see if it's, been repaired or not, but I walked that area. We live just on the other side, in the Granite Street, so that's part of my path. And I'll walk there just to keep an eye on things.
My kids live there now,
But I think the idea, Carl, was,
but it's not that nice.
Any other thoughts, questions?
Do you know, I know you're pushing it back.
Mhm.
We're actually gonna be on vacation the next time you guys have a meeting. It's not just gonna be decided that meeting, is it? It's
It-
gonna be,
Possibly could be.
Yes, it could.
So August 8th would be the next meeting, and if they're able to address all the concerns and say why it's fine, then we could potentially close it.
But we would probably, he'll have to come back, give that defense, and you're gonna have to put it back through DEP to confirm that it works.
Say that again?
Right, well, DEP has come and said, here's these,
Yeah.
conditions. He's gotta say, hey, I meet them, but you will confirm that with DEP, right?
Yeah.
Not just by yourself. So that'd take a while. It might be ready by the next meeting or not. But if it is, we will go ahead and probably, I won't be the chair of that meeting, but cast a vote, because that's our job, is to cast votes. Not necessarily pass or fail, but to cast a vote. And with that DEP number, I would think we would be doing that.
And just in anticipation of any concerns you might have or anything like that, if, say we do close it on that meeting and you have some sort of specific issue with that, it's possible to appeal any decision that we make to DEP, and the DEP, I think, as an entity themselves can appeal approvals that we make. So if we approve it and ignore the standards that they commented on and just say it's fine anyway, they could still come around and appeal it and say, so the comments need to be addressed one way or the other.
Best chance though is to speak your mind now while you're here. And we're listening.
So.
Bob?
I'd like to let you in on, some of the discussion earlier too on site was that that's not the final grade. I mean, they were talking maybe even a 15-foot retention wall or maybe terrace too. You know, it wouldn't look the way it is now, a final completion, you know. If you're looking at it like, I look at it like, oh my God, it's gonna fall off the edge, or the poor kid that's gonna lose his ball, it's gotta run the mile to go get it after. But it's not, that is not the way it would be in the final completion.
are they gonna clear some of the trees then?
No, I don't think they can take any more trees at all.
No additional tree clearing, but a series of terraced retaining walls. I also have I have the plans in my office. I'd be happy to provide a copy of those to you if you want me to send it over. You can stop by my office anytime, so.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
No, well, yes.
Yes.
Definitely yes. Going into the next meeting, I assume you're gonna talk to DEP for clarification on some of their comments.
Yep.
I wanna make sure, understanding if there are exceptions for single family houses versus duplexes, that we have an understanding of what that distinction would be and
Yep.
how that would, play into what's allowed.
There's a wording in the stormwater handbook that lays out the specification for when the standard should and shouldn't apply, and it mentioned, the wording of that states, for single family houses / units / whatever, so they leave that language a little broader. So it's not just
Comes
single
down to
family
the
houses.
footprint, pretty much, right?
It's
it's the number of dwellings, I believe, basically. So like if it's 2 duplexes, then it would count as 4 units in the wording.
So if we have no further thoughts, questions, I'll ask for a motion to continue this hearing to the next meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Bob.
I got one.
Got one.
Second.
Thank you, Stephanie.
And I'll take the rest of the commission's vote by roll call, Jim Chambers
Aye.
and Richard Gulick.
Aye.
Alright, motion continued to August 8th, 2023.
Very good, thank you. I appreciate your interest.
Thank you.
It's a little less exciting today as last time.
Hey.
There was a little,
Sorry.
he was a lot more understanding than the other guy.
Alright.
I think he's.
Good night.
Good night. So the next continued hearing, I'm not gonna read in because we're just gonna skip it over till next time.
Basically, Norse Environmental will be flagging next week, and then Phil will be ready for August 8th to present that. We can continue.
And he'll show us another proposal and we can go out and take a look at 50 feet from the wetland boundary and 50 feet from the stream boundary. See how they
I'll be planning a site visit before August 8th for that. So.
Great. Okay, so
Miniature chickens.
And is it like standard of practice for when you have wetland flagging for it to have like a little report that goes with it?
That's what I've seen.
Okay.
they probably charge you a little extra, so it depends. They might not.
Yeah, that might be an option.
I feel like because of the discussions we've had on this and, you know, what is being considered wetland and because there's so little vegetation, if there was a report that said how that boundary was being made, I would want to see
That
it.
would be helpful.
I would
Please
prefer,
ask.
if anyone's asking me, yes, please.
Okay, great. Okay, our next item is nothing in certificates of compliance. There's an extension permit for 495 Main Street, DEP file number 199-1111. Nick,
Okay.
what do you got for us?
So, the representative for the applicant, which was Chris Anderson with Hannigan Engineering actually, sent the request for an extension. Let me just pull that email up.
Is this a request for an extension
Yes,
of an order of conditions?
of an order of conditions, yeah.
For, what's the case?
So it is for the Durand GMC Buick dealership at 495 Main Street. They're in the riverfront area of North Nashua River. They're right along the river there. And the work is basically done, the building is constructed. So currently the project is under active construction, it's near the end. They need to finish work in the parking area, basically. Like the building is
They
completed.
just run out of time, your 3 years ran out, or what? Is that what happened? What are they asking for from us?
Yeah, and when does their existing order expire?
So the existing order was issued on August 6th, 2020, so it's set to expire August 6th of this year.
Okay, so very soon.
Yeah.
Before our next meeting.
Yeah.
Nick, do you have any reason why we shouldn't give an extension? For what are they asking for, 1 year?
They're asking for a 3-year extension, but we could extend it however long we need to and request more information if that's something
I
that
wouldn't
you'd
give
like.
more than a year without more info.
Yeah,
If it's
so
just paving.
we could extend it for a year and so I would say that we could I would recommend we'd extend it for a year to August 6th of 2024, and if they need more time to request it at that time.
Any discussion? I'll take a motion to that effect. Anybody?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Stephanie. To
I'll
give a
second.
1 year extension, seconded by Bob.
Okay, take the rest of the commission's vote by roll call, Jim Chambers.
Aye.
And Richard Gulick.
Aye,
Alright.
pass 4-0 for 1 year extension.
Are we gonna ask for information or? Yeah, I didn't understand.
Basically, they just kind of ran out of time, like they're very near done, they need to do some repaving of the parking area, but I get the impression that there's no immediate plans for that, so that's why they need more time.
We'll need more info if they want another extension. We can give them 1 year pretty easy, that's.
I would imagine there's probably delays during COVID and such, given the issue date, but
Yeah.
you know,
Well, that's,
Okay.
we're making it another year.
No problem. Next is under communications. Nick is gonna tell us something about the Johnny Appleseed State Park land acquisition.
yeah, so I received a draft deed from Peter Bavenzi's lawyer. Peter Bavenzi is overseeing the management of the former Leominster Land Trust parcels. So Peter Bavenzi's lawyer, Jim Moriarty, typed up a draft deed and sent it over to myself and the mayor's office. I sent that over to our legal team to review it, and I spoke with them today. There is a question of, there's a concern of liabilities with taking on the 5-acre parcel, Johnny Appleseed, abutting the Johnny Appleseed State Parklands, which we're talking about, because part of that contains a portion of the breached dam from the Lake Leominster Dam, or the Worcester Railway Dam as it's also called, that breached back in the 30s. So there's been studies in the past to get it removed. Back in 2017, there was a study that determined a complete removal would cost like $1.6 million. In today's money, I'm told that would easily be like twice as much as that. Yeah. And also in related to this property, I walked the area with Martha Morgan of Natural River Watershed Association and Senator John Cronin, State Senator John Cronin, to discuss the future of the dam specifically in that area of land more broadly, and everyone's in agreement that they would ultimately like to see the dam completely removed. The mayor and the city included in that. And again, ultimately, I would like to see this parcel adopted or taken on by the city and turned into like a park, an official park entrance for the enjoyment of Leominster citizens. But the issue of the dam and the liabilities associated with that needs to get hammered out. So I'm gonna be speaking a little bit more with the mayor's office and seeing what our possibilities are for securing funding, because that's another piece of it. Is it might be easier to get funding to remove the dam if it's under city ownership or if it's under Leominster Land Trust ownership. I need to hammer out some of those details, if any of those are factors in this at all, but we're gonna hold off on accepting the land for now because of those liabilities, and I'm gonna be just basically looking into it more and pursuing the dam removal. But
So no action for us.
no action for us, just keeping you up to date because I did have that meeting with the senator and Natural River, and things were kind of starting to move along. It looked like we were ready to take this on, but in light of the liabilities from the legal team, I think we're gonna hold off on it for now.
Commissioner Chambers.
Well, who, Peter Bavenzi is responsible for the land on the land trust? The land trust owns the land?
So he's been my point of contact. It's owned by Leominster Land Trust. That's the name on the property, and Peter administers all that. Yeah, it's owned by Leominster Land Trust, but it's effectively.
So what does the term state mean in Johnny Appleseed State Park?
So there is a number of parcels along the river and in that general area that are state owned, that are I've seen on several maps and just informally have been calling it Johnny Appleseed State Park.
It's not an actual state park, right?
It's state land and there's a number of trail systems through there. I don't know.
It's a state park without capital letters, it's not.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
or
State
maybe, well, actually, Leominster State Forest is in various spots. It's
Yeah.
not just over
It's
on
not that.
Westminster.
No, yeah, I've seen the name Leominster State Park specifically on certain maps. I can't recall which ones, but that's where I originally got this name from.
Okay.
So why wouldn't the state not take this as part of, if that is state land there, why would?
So they do own half of the dam. The east side of the river is part of that state, is one of those state-owned parcels, and then the west side of the river is encompassed by the Leominster Land Trust parcel.
Okay, and so that is an attractive nuisance.
Yes. So it would probably be a joint venture anyhow to get the dam completely removed, because it's on, half of it is already on state-owned land.
Okay, and do we have migrating fish swimming against the dam, or are they trying to get?
I don't know about fish specifically, but water freely flows over the dam. It's been completely breached for 80 years, something like that, so there's not a big, it's not retaining any water.
Okay, I just know there's been a lot of effort to remove
Mhm.
antique dams.
Yes, yeah. So the dam isn't, removal of the dam, and this is one of the things that KP Law, the lawyers that we consult with, brought up in the liabilities was possibility of flooding downstream properties, but there's no, I would say that there's no danger of that based on just having seen the dam and water flows pretty freely over it.
That it for that?
That's it for me.
Okay. We have nothing on our agenda for emergency certifications, new business, old business, or budget. Sir?
Well, it may be new business, I just have a question, I was driving down the Leominster connector today, and I saw equipment and a big sign, hazmat cleanup or something, do we know what's going on?
So that is the Natural River Bank Stabilization Project that I think we talked about at the last meeting on the 11th.
It's not a hazmat cleanup.
Not a hazmat.
Well,
It's
he
a
had,
hazard, it's a hazard, because it could take away a conduit.
There's a sewer main that runs
yeah,
through.
all right, well, I saw something that said hazard.
Yeah, that's
As
for
a-
that project.
As a Superfund engineer,
Right.
hazard to me means.
Don't think so, but
No,
I
yeah.
don't know what you saw exactly.
I had not,
That's the sewer project, the sewer line within the riverbank.
and I know as they've excavated that, they've dug into a portion of the landfill from decades ago, because the landfill basically went all the way down to the river at one
On the
point.
road, okay.
Yeah, so there's some of that that's been exposed, and they're cleaning that up as
Well,
they
that's,
go. Yeah,
that may indeed be the hazardous material.
they might be, yeah. I have
That's what they're picking up, yeah.
I've not been by there today, I haven't heard anything
Well, the
from,
project itself wasn't, unless you broke the sewer line.
I walked.
Or if you encounter hazardous materials, if you're digging up an old
Yeah.
landfill, which
No,
is.
absolutely, but
They
otherwise.
could have found a whole bunch of drums, it happens.
Yeah.
I walked the project after the storm too. Just because
this one?
I was in it, and I said, go check it out.
Yeah.
And there is a section where you see kind of like, what's that doing there?
yeah,
You know, like a rubber tire or.
exactly.
It looked like a landfill, does a landfill come all the way over here?
Yeah, they went through it when they put the connector in, they excavated a good deal of it.
That makes sense. So the next thing on the agenda are for meeting minutes to approve. I'd like to pass both of these tonight for these reasons. For the November 8th, 2022, I was not present. Mike and Chuck were the only two current commissioners who were there that meeting.
I was there,
Oh, you were there? Oh, I missed on the time then. My apology.
pretty sure I was there,
Have you reviewed the minutes?
I did.
You good with them? I mean, I
Yeah.
looked at them, I had one comment. If you were,
I looked at them, I also had one little
I didn't
comment.
double check that. If you were there, then I'd be glad to have you lead us and approve those minutes.
Yeah, according to my calendar, I was here. I went to the dentist at 3. And then-
More detail than Robert needs. Yeah, okay. I just thought it was before your time, so my bad. So would you like to,
November 2022?
November 8th, 2022.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking
You came in
forward to it.
September.
oh, my bad, time's flying.
I know, it's almost been a year.
And that was in November?
Yes.
Oh, I don't have the agenda because I wasn't here. But I had one correction, I think, for Nick, and that was it.
Mhm.
Yeah, great. So would you care to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I will make that motion to approve those minutes.
Is there a second?
Well,
I'll second that.
Alright. And
I'll move this along.
yeah, the rest of the commission's vote by roll call, Jim Chambers.
Can I say aye? Yes.
You are allowed to and encouraged to if somebody else was here
Yeah.
to them, because
We need a
to approve
majority,
minutes.
yeah.
Okay, aye.
So, and Bob Seacard.
I'm here now.
Alright. Minutes accepted.
Thank you. We've been through this with all of us. We've all resisted voting at first, right?
Yes.
Me before you,
Yeah.
et cetera.
Yeah,
But we need to approve them. So that's why I wanna make sure somebody was here who read them.
yes.
Yeah.
Good enough. July 11th ones weren't ready for me to read. I'd like to read those as of yesterday or the day before. So I'd like to hold that one to the next two.
Oh.
Okay. But they're up there now?
They are.
I was too
I read
busy
them.
since that day to get to them, so.
I read them at 5:40 today.
I had a client call at that time. Any other commissioner questions, commissioner news? Our next meeting is August 8th, filing deadline July 21st at noon. Followed by that, it's August 22nd, the filing deadline August 4th. Thank you for a very productive meeting and discussion. I especially appreciate those commissioners who disagreed with me when I was expressing my opinions. Keep that up. We are not one person. We are a commission. I hold by my opinion and priorities, but this is good to hear. Definitely good to hear. Do we have a motion to, what's the term?
Adjourned.
Adjourn the meeting.
So made.
Thank you, Stephanie. Is there a second?
Sorry.
Bob, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Bob.
And take the rest of the commission's vote by roll call, Jim Chambers
Aye.
and Richard Gully.
All right. Oh, I gotta put you on.